What's going on? Woo. Welcome in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast, and I am pleased to say that I am joined not only by Tyler, typically it's just Tyler and I on the Stardom Saturday episodes, but I am also joined by our esteemed colleague, Cameron Lawrence is on the pod on a Saturday morning. I don't know what we did to somehow be blessed with all of our presents, whatever the plural is for presents, on one podcast together. This makes my heart happy.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I got done sipping my mimosas and I was like, well, I guess I can join. So hop on.
I'm out here still sipping on Starbucks, not a sponsor. Cameron's out here, comes on the call. Look, I'm drinking mimosas.
I'm sipping on water because I got to stay hydrated.
I mean, it's 11:30 here right now. So I got that extra hour on you guys. So I've been buzzing for about 4 hours. Well, not okay. I see how that comes off. I didn't mean like alcohol buzzing. I just meant like up and at him for 4 hours.
Cameron's I've been drinking since 6 a.m. this morning.
All right, here we go.
Big day ahead of me. It's Saturday, college football. FF Fellas on Twitter, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube, where you should be subscribed. Turn on those notifications so you know when new episodes are coming out. Same with the podcast. And if you want to join a fantasy football community full of league winners, get unsolicited fantasy advice from us, from other people in the fantasy football community, you can join our Chalkboard down in the link of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Got a full show, especially with three of us. Now we got 3 starts of the weeks for every position to go through. And now we have even more opinions on player props now at the end, right?
Yes, sir.
From our great friends over at Underdog. Extra emphasis on great. But let's quick discuss Thursday Night Football. Rams, Raiders. That's the Raiders choking. Yeah, Rams. I don't know how they pulled it out, but they did 17-16 over the Raiders. How much of this game do we really want to talk about outside of Baker Mayfield leading a game-winning drive after being on the team for only 2 days and supposedly knowing enough of the playbook to make a start? I have no words for it.
Yeah, it's crazy. The only thing I think that's worth noting is what happened to Kyron Williams. I mean, this man was taking over the backfield, and then all of the sudden, Cam Akers fumbles in this game, and he still only gets 3 carries. It's just mind-boggling. But yeah, back to your point about Baker Mayfield, they were talking in the beginning of the broadcast, Raiders are going to run the table. They were in the same spot last year and made the playoffs, and you lose to Baker Mayfield and the Rams right now. It's like, oh boy.
I think the thing that makes the Kyron Williams situation worse is not just that Cam Akers is getting more snaps. Malcolm Brown got the same amount of snaps as Kyron Williams. What happened? What happened? And no one's asking this question. And this makes me want to become a journalist, go to the press conferences and be like, how dare you do this to my fantasy team? I needed this. What is going on?
I am an unbiased journalist. I am coming in here only caring about my fantasy agenda.
Could you imagine, though? That would make media press conferences so much better if you had fantasy football people come in who have them on their team and are like, why are you screwing me right now? Like last year with Brandon Ayuk, why aren't you letting him play?
Right.
That would make press conferences so much better.
We'll push an agenda for the NFL to sign off on to make this happen.
Come on, Roger.
So we talk about Kyron Williams kind of disappearing. Can we talk about Devontae Adams though? One target in the second half.
I don't.
3 of 4 for 71 right off the bat, and then this man sees 3 targets the rest of the game after that. I don't understand. This is when we did our top 10 rankings rest of season for wide receivers, this is exactly why we had Devontae Adams at, I believe he was at 4, if I'm not mistaken, because he's just, this Raiders offense is too inconsistent.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It's
doesn't make
strange because he'll go like 8 of 8 for 80 yards and a touchdown on one drive. And then they don't throw to him for 6 drives in a row. And it's just like, you realize if you throw him the ball every single time, like he catches it and does great things. So I don't understand.
It just felt like the Raiders are playing to not lose in the second half.
That was going to be my point if nobody else brought it up. Yeah.
Yep.
Because they entirely went back to Josh Jacobs. Josh Jacobs, 27 carries, 99 yards, touchdown in there, right? 19.4 fantasy points. But like, I look at those numbers for Jacobs, and it's like, yeah, you got up 16-3, and you chose to not put the nail in the coffin. You just chose to play scared, and not continue pushing the ball down the field. When Devontae Adams was torching Jalen Ramsey effortlessly. Did you guys see that highlight of how he torched him? It was like his 25-yard catch down the sideline.
Yeah.
And Devontae Adams looked like he was just sleepwalking out there. And Jalen Ramsey's like running for his life to keep up with him.
I know.
I mean, just a disgusting game. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Thursday night recap. Let's move on to some news and notes from around the league heading into the weekend, brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper. #1 fantasy football platform in the world. You can join over 4 million people playing fantasy sports on Sleeper by using the link down in the description of our audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Lots of injury updates. I am literally just going to fly through this list. I'll ask an occasional question here or there, but like there have been a ton of injury updates that have popped up throughout this week. More than usual. Amari Cooper, he's questionable after not practicing Friday due to a hip injury. He picked it up on Thursday because he practiced in limited. I saw this originally. Didn't practice on Friday. Amari did say he should be okay to suit up this weekend. If he's playing, are you still starting Amari Cooper if he's playing? I feel like you have to, given he's the wide receiver 8 divisional matchup against Cincy, but also I feel like this game could just be an in between the trenches kind of a game because that's how AFC North battles are late in the season.
Yeah, I'm starting Deonta Foreman and Devonta Smith over top of Amari Cooper this week, so that should tell you where I'm at. I mean, he's on the road too, and Deshaun Watson did not look good last week, so I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait a week if he's not feeling great and got all that going against him.
Yeah, we'll talk about Deshaun Watson and the props, but that is the sole reason why I'm not playing Amari Cooper, because Deshaun Watson is just he's still getting used to the NFL again. It's okay to not play Amari Cooper this week. We give you permission to bench him.
I think I'd still play him. Are they at home this week?
Nope, they're on the road.
Okay, bench Amari Cooper this week.
That was one of the big things.
Never mind. Yeah, you can go ahead. You can feel the freedom to shift Amari Cooper around in your lineup if you have other options that you want to play this week. Like, I don't know, I would play Garrett Wilson over Amari Cooper. I would play I'd play a lot of wide receivers over Amari Cooper this week. I think he'd probably be. I would play Tyler Lockett over Amari Cooper this week. We'll get to him. We'll get to him. Brian Dable. He said it's possible Saquon's status for Sunday is in doubt. He hopes he'll play, but it's a wait and see kind of a game. That makes me want to grab Brian Dable by the neck and just like shakes him like, no, I don't need this. I'm trying to make the fantasy playoffs. I am dependent on Saquon Barkley having a big week against Philadelphia this week.
I love it too. It's possible that his status is in doubt. Like, it's not in doubt, but it's possible it could be. But he hopes so. Like, the whole sentence contradicts himself. Oh, I gotta love coaches.
That's one to keep tabs on, because that could be a big deal, especially if you're a Saquon Barkley manager and you are trying to make this final push for the playoffs this week, like me. I'm not going to be too upset if I lose because it's Dynasty and I'll have the 4th overall pick. But at the same time, I have a chance to make the playoffs. I want to win. Tyler Huntley, he'll officially get his first start of the season. Lamar Jackson is out for Sunday. This shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody. Leonard Fournette, he's questionable. He didn't practice Friday. He picked up a foot injury on Thursday. Todd Bowles is hopeful that he'll play. I mean, this just I wasn't forcing Lenny into my lineup this week against San Francisco. This makes me not want to play him even more.
Yep. Yeah.
Kenneth Walker. Oh, go ahead.
Lucky. I'm just agreeing with you. That's my bad.
Kenneth Walker, DJ Dallas, they are game time decisions. Travis Homer is good to go. I believe Tony Jones Jr. will also be good to go. He had picked up an injury late in the game last week. So the only running back I really want to play is probably like Ken Walker if he does play. I mean, the matchup is great against Carolina. But if you like, this could be DJ Dallas and Travis Homer just going back and forth with each other in this game. And if DJ Dallas doesn't play, like, I'm not convinced Travis Homer is the 1A. Like, I think it could be a Travis Homer and Tony Jones split backfield kind of a week, like we saw with Rashad Penny and Ken Walker to start the year. The only running back I would for sure be locking into my lineup is Ken Walker. Should he actually play, but he might even be on snap count if he plays.
That's true.
Traylon Burks, he's out due to a concussion. You can pretty much expect this. Whenever a player sustains a concussion in a given week in the NFL, you can almost guarantee they're going to miss the next week with the new NFL concussion protocols.
Yep.
My guess that like those really haven't been revealed, but that'd be my guess is that that's like part of the new protocol is like they have to sit out at least a week. We won't speculate too much into that, but Deonta Foreman, he's dealing with a foot injury. He'll be good to go. I believe he practiced in full on Thursday and Friday, if I'm not mistaken. He was a DNP on Wednesday, limited on Thursday. I think he practiced full yesterday. I don't recall the exact injury report. That being said, he's good to go. Fire him up against Seattle. We'll talk about him too later on. No Brandon Cooks or Nico Collins for Houston this weekend. Yikes. Nico Collins looked like he had a shot. He was practicing in limited this week, I had thought at one point. Little Philip Dorsett action this weekend. If you need a desperation, if I'm playing DFS this weekend, I'm probably putting Jordan Akins in my tight end spot. If I'm doing a little DFS action this weekend, get him on the cheap. I get it's Dallas. But Dallas is going to win this game 600-2. Like
that's my worry is that Houston has like 15 total yards of offense. Like Damian Pierce could have 15 attempts for 1 yard in this game.
He could.
They're just going to stack the box. It's going to be gross.
Mike Williams, he's all good to go for Sunday. It'll be good to see him back out on the field. Cortland Sutton, he's out with a hamstring injury. He was listed as doubtful to start the week, so this shouldn't really come as a surprise. Trevor Lawrence, he's questionable going into Sunday. He is, this is a more like optimistic than pessimistic tag here. He himself has said all week that he's going to play on Sunday. So now how much do you really want to put into the players' words? But it seems like you count on Trevor Lawrence being out there in Superflex leagues. I doubt you're starting him in a redraft, but in Superflex leagues, I mean, even against the Titans this week, you could probably fire Trevor Lawrence up. Mm-hmm. Deontay Johnson, he's a game time decision with a hip injury. I really don't want to play any Steelers this week against the Ravens, not even George Pickens. Damian Harris, he was a DNP on Friday. He's likely out. So hello, Ramondre Stevenson, another massive week incoming.
Yes, sir.
And then J.K. Dobbins, he should be activated off the IR today after the Ravens waived Mike Davis. Using notes from around the league. I remember he's on the Ravens. Remember that guy? News and notes from around the league brought to you by our friends over at Sleeper, the number one fantasy football platform in the world. If you want to join over 4 million people playing fantasy football, fantasy sports, you can join using the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Alrighty, week 14 starts of the week. We've got 3 starts of the week from all 3 of us now. We've never had this before this year. So we're going to fly through starts of the week because then we also have to get to props. And then we got 3 opinions on props. So we gotta make up some time by going a little bit more quickly here. So let's do it. Tyler, as always, I'm going to start with you. Cameron, you can be the follow-up act and I'll be the closer because
all right.
That's what I always play.
Wild thing.
No, I was actually mostly a starter when I played in Little League. I digress, though. Tyler, why don't you start with your quarterback start of the week?
I'm starting off with Lucas's favorite player, honestly.
My dad.
It's Father Brady. It's Tom Brady. Okay.
I love you, Dad. I know you listen to the podcast. I love you.
Tom Brady in back-to-back weeks has had 18 fantasy points, which is solid, right? It's not the 20 plus that you would hope for from a quarterback, but it's also not the 15 or below where you're just like, that's unplayable, right? I'm betting on the underdog Brady in this game with San Francisco being, I'm pretty sure San Francisco is still favored by 3.5 with Brock Purdy.
Yep.
Here's the difference though. The weakness of this 49ers defense is the secondary. No team can run on them, but you can definitely throw the ball on them. I mean, we saw with Tyreek, with Tua, and Tua had a horrible game. Nick Bosa, he's questionable and pretty much doubtful for this game after not practicing all week due to a hamstring issue. If the Niners are down Nick Bosa, that pass rush is, I shouldn't say it's non-existent, but it's not to the full strength. And when you give Tom Brady time in the pocket, he will tear you apart on defense. So you combine that with this leaky secondary of the Niners. I think it wouldn't be a surprise if Brady goes for 20 plus this week, just due to the, height of this matchup and the matchup itself. I like Brady this week.
This feels like one of those games too, where it's like Tampa, I know they're on top of the division, but like they really got to ice their playoff spot here. It just feels like this is the time where Brady puts it in full gear. And when everybody was questioning Brady, now's the time he kicks into full gear. So I really don't hate that. I really don't hate that. Cameron, your start of the week. I sneaky like your start of the week a lot.
I'm going Geno Smith. I mean, the dude's been playing really, really well all season, and especially last 4 games. He's had 4 top 12 finishes in a row, and 2 of them were inside the top 5. This Carolina team is not great. They got an okay defense, right? I think the defense would actually be pretty good if their offense was on the field more. And I actually don't mind the Carolina offense this week with Sam Darnold and starting at quarterback. I think that they can get the ball moving, which leads to more of a high-scoring game, especially because Seattle's run defense has been awful. And so I think if it's a little bit high-scoring game, I think Geno continues to air the ball out. DK and Lockett have been playing amazing. And so I would continue to ride the hot hand of Geno Smith here because it's definitely getting into must-win games for Seattle if they want to make the playoffs.
Yeah, we'll talk about that game a little bit more because I like a lot of pieces in that game this weekend. I'm surprised none of you took our boy Captain Kirk Cousins here. I'm taking the quarterback on the other side of the ball in that game this weekend. Jared Goff at home against the Vikings. Yeah, sign me up. I want everything to do with Jared Goff this week. He's averaging 21 fantasy points in home games this year. Against Minnesota at home last year, he scored 21 fantasy points. I think Jared Goff has a top 10 week this week. Minnesota has allowed a 300-plus yard passer in each of their past 4 games. And Minnesota's allowing the most passing yards per attempt, the 3rd most air yards per game, and the 7th most fantasy points to quarterbacks this year. This is going to be your 50-plus point high-scoring game of the week. You can start a ton of pieces in this game. I'm surprised we don't have more of them in our starts of the week, honestly. There are a ton of pieces you can start. Kirk Cousins, Jared Goff, DeAndre Swift. You're firing up Amon-Ra. I think DJ Chark could be a fine flyer this week. Adam Thielen, I think, could be in your lineup. You're obviously starting Justin. I mean, we could keep going down the list. There are a ton of high-scoring pieces that are going to be in this game. I like Jared Goff. I think he has top 10 upside this week.
Yeah.
Running back starts of the week. Tyler, we just talked about this game with Cameron's start of the week at quarterback. You're going to flip to the other side of the ball, though, for the running back.
It's Mr. Foreman. And I just want to start this off with a little bit of a joke. Do you guys remember that we had someone in our comments on one of our platforms saying, "This is how you pronounce his name"? I looked it up, and it's literally Deontay. Exactly what we were saying. So, Deontay Foreman, my start of the week at running back. The way to beat this Seattle defense is on the ground, right? We all know what Josh Jacobs did, going for 300 scrimmage yards against this defense. but Cam Akers getting 2 touchdowns, like that is one of the best. It's like one of the best signs of confidence you could have for a running back going up against Seattle is when you give Cam Akers 2 touchdowns. Foreman has also run for 100+ rushing yards in 4 of his last 6 games. So you combine that. Yeah. 4 games out of his last 6 with 100+ rushing yards. Okay. Fire up. I love Foreman this week. Fire him up. He's a awesome start this week.
His line earlier this week on Prize Picks, promo code fellas, if you want to go take advantage of this. I saw his line at 55.5 rushing yards. I'm going to check that quick because
what?
I saw that this week. Yeah, his line's still at 55.5 rushing yards on Prize Picks.
Over.
That's an easy over.
The last 5 weeks. Oh, sorry. The last 5 weeks, Seattle's given up 182 rushing yards per game.
Like I went on because I went on the Fantasy Doctor show and to talk player props with them. I brought up Derrick Henry, who is one of my favorite plays this week. I brought up Garrett Wilson, and I brought up Deonta Foreman, who wasn't practicing yet. I said, but keep an eye on that because if this line doesn't change any plays this week, this is free money. So yeah, 55.5 for Deonta Foreman against Seattle. That's like, go take advantage of that right now.
Yes, sir.
Cameron, your start of the week at running back.
I went back to that Vikings-Lions game.
And I spoiled it for you. I didn't scroll down and look who see that you were actually starting. I love this start.
Yep, I'm going DeAndre Swift. Last week he played 51% of snaps, took 69% of carries. He kind of reestablished himself in a game that should have been a Jamal Williams game script. Like Detroit dominated the Jags last week, and so I have a lot of faith this week that DeAndre Swift's going to keep that up. Vikings are allowing the 12th most fantasy points to running backs. And if Jared Goff's going to throw a ton, DeAndre Swift is just going to get a bunch of receptions. I mean, he could easily have a six receptions on 8 targets kind of game and for 45 yards, whatever. And there's an extra 10 fantasy points. He gets in the end zone. He's up to 16 without any rushing stats. And so that's what I really think we can expect from DeAndre Swift. And yeah, I mean, if it's a high scoring game, you want the receiving back who is one of the best receiving backs in the league. So yeah, DeAndre Swift.
Minnesota over the past month allowing the most fantasy points to the running back position.
Oh, there you go.
I'm trying to pull up their receiving numbers, but like we all saw what Ramondre Stevenson did to them. 10 targets, 9 receptions. I 100% agree. This is going to be one of those Swift games that, he'll probably give you 150 all-purpose yards on, 20 touches, and 10 of those are going to come through the receiving game. Start of the week for me, ladies and gentlemen. Zeke haters of all varieties. I regret to inform you that Mr. Ezekiel Elliott has been a top 12 fantasy running back in 4 of the past 5 games. He scored at least 15.5 fantasy points in each of the past 5 games. He has scored 7 touchdowns in that stretch. He's averaging 4.6 yards per carry. So I ask you, where is this washed Ezekiel Elliott that you all speak of? I get the matchups have been good. And this is no discredit to Tony Pollard either. He's been everything that Pollard truthers have said and more this year. That's not to discredit Tony Pollard, but to just write off Zeke. We have to give this man his flowers, please. It just buried in the offseason. Now here he is as a top 12 running back, top 10 running back over the past 5 weeks. And now this week you're giving me him against the Texans, who the Cowboys are going to Thanos snap out of the NFL. They've allowed the most rushing yards, rushing attempts, rushing touchdowns, the 4th most yards per carry, and the 2nd most fantasy points to running backs this year. Top 10 play from Zeke this week. Don't even question putting Zeke into your lineup. Can I say I like him just as much as DeAndre Swift this week? Am I allowed to say that?
For sure.
I love Zeke. I love Zeke this week because I think the Cowboys are just going to run rampant on the Houston Texans this week. Wide receiver starts. Yes, Tyler, I love your start of the week at wide receiver. Why don't you tell the people the truth about phenomenal young stud here?
Garrett Wilson has been the best rookie wide receiver this year. And I don't think it's really even close. I know Chris Olave has done pretty well, but Garrett Wilson is something special. Okay. Both of Mike White's appearances have resulted in Garrett Wilson finishing as a top 10 wide receiver. He finished as a wide receiver 2, I think, one week, and then the wide receiver was it 9 this past week. That's again top 10. And now he gets Buffalo, and Buffalo has allowed the second most fantasy points per game to wide receivers over the last 4 weeks. That includes the 4th most receptions, the 6th most receiving yards, and the 2nd most touchdowns. And I wanted to go like last 2 weeks, but as you can remember, Buffalo just played New England. Take that New England game with a grain of salt, because that New England offense is in shambles. It is just there's no good thing with that offense besides Ramondre Stevenson. And I talked about it. I think I talked about it on this episode last week where I said, like, I can't really play any Patriots wide receivers, including Jacoby Myers, in fantasy anymore. Okay.
Yeah.
That's how much of a grain of salt you should take looking at that Bills Patriots game. Last 4 weeks, Buffalo has just not been great against wide receivers. And here's the other thing. They just lost Von Miller. There's no pass rush anymore with this Bills defense. Mike White feasts with no pass rush. Give me Garrett Wilson this week. Bonafide stud.
Wow. Ty, I feel so unprepared. You are just blowing my mind with some of these stats. Like the fact Buffalo is 2nd most fantasy points per game with wide receivers the last 4 weeks is just like mind blowing to me. Like, and then the Deonta Foreman, like I am like so out of wow, these are crazy.
This is what happens when you jump on. I'm just kidding.
I know. No, exactly. Ty's pulling out these crazy stats I wouldn't even have considered. So, ooh, love it.
Other thing with Buffalo too, can we acknowledge Tre'Davious White? He's been back since Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Limited snap count, but like he's been back on the field, people.
Mm-hmm.
And this Buffalo defense is still getting torched by wide receivers. They're not the formidable matchup that they once were. Cameron, your start of the week, a fellow favorite here. We'll just continue speaking truth and victory lapping this guy all season.
Yeah, I had to ask Lucas if this was even okay because to us, he's a top 10, like he's a top 12 wide receiver, like every single week. He just, he feels like it. You just look like when we look at top 12 wide receivers, we're not going to say, oh, Christian Kirk is top 12. But every single week when you look at it, you're like, man, this matchup is really good for Christian Kirk. I guess I've put him in my top 12. Man, I really like Christian Kirk this week. But to the rest of the fantasy football community, he's still barely viewed as a top 24 option. For a lot of people, I feel like he's just so disrespected. But he gets the Titans this week, who are the worst team against fantasy wide receivers on the season. This Titans team just got bullied by A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith last week. Christian Kirk has seen 7+ targets each of the last 6 weeks, 8 in 5 of the last 6 weeks, 9 and 4 of the last 6 weeks. Like, he's been on fire, and he's been playing really well, and now he gets an amazing matchup. I really like Christian Kirk in this one.
Yeah, any wide receiver against the Titans, fire him up. And if he gets Trevor Lawrence on the field, that's just certified. Got to start Christian Kirk.
Yep.
My start of the week is going to come from that Carolina-Seattle game. I'm having I feel it in my bones kind of week with Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett is my start of the week. I think this is the week he goes 30+. I think this is the week he goes bonkers. Like, it's one of those where, like, I've loved Tyler Lockett since he reminded us that, like, oh, you know what? Actually, I can still do this without Russ. He's come close to 30+ this year. He scored 27 twice. But I think this is the week. Like, he has his notorious 53 points against Arizona 2 years ago. He has his 40-point game against Tampa. He has one of these massive games every year where you're just like, oh, yeah. Yeah, not Christian Kirk. Tyler Lockett can go bonkers. I think this is the week. You look into the stats to the naked eye. Carolina isn't like a smash play for wide receivers. They allow the 13th most fantasy points on the year, but over the past month, they've allowed the 5th fewest to wide receivers. So they've typically been a tough matchup over the past month. But in terms of schedule adjusted fantasy points allowed, Carolina is 9th. So they allow a ton of fantasy points when you adjust their schedule in comparison to other teams. And Tyler Lockett draws CJ Henderson this week. Who? I need a broadcast boys drop there of who. I need that. Here's the thing though. CJ Henderson, he's woeful. 46.4 PFF grading coverage this year. And I get not everybody likes PFF, but like when we're grading wide receivers, like we have to start acknowledging there's not many metrics out here for these kind of things. So when we get a grade from people who are putting tons of hours and time into it, like we have to put some weight into these. So CJ Henderson, 46.4 grade from PFF this year. Absolutely atrocious. Tyler Lockett, he boasts a perfect 100 matchup advantage, according to PFF, over CJ Henderson this week. So there's it's a smash play for Tyler Lockett. So you don't get Ken Walker. I think, Cameron, like you said, this team could put the ball in Geno's hands a bit more. And I think Lockett's touchdown streak gets extended to 6 games here. He scored in each of the past 5 games. I think he makes it 6 this week. I'm feeling it in my bones. This is the 30, 35 plus point week from Tyler Lockett. I'm feeling it. So get Tyler Lockett into your lineups. And now that I've said all this, he's going to flop miserably.
Nope.
Tight end starts of the week.
I'm going to clip that, and then I'm going to have it ready, and I'm going to schedule it for right when that game ends so that it goes out no matter what. So you better be right, because if you're wrong, we're going to have a clip out there saying that Lockett's going to score 30 points, and you put it 4.
And you're going to leave out the part at the end where that has to be saved for the last 2 seconds. So for all the people who don't watch the video, they're like, oh, this guy's wrong. I'm like, oh, they're not going to acknowledge the part where I said, now that I've said it, it's not going to happen. And everyone's going to miss the joke. Let's wrap out starts of the week with tight ends. I hate talking tight ends because it's a desolate wasteland. And I like
Travis Kelce. Yeah,
Travis Kelce's my start of the week at tight end. Borderline there. Tyler, your start of the week at tight end. You're going to need to do some explaining on this one because
I'm letting
it slide. I'm letting it slide for now. I'm letting it slide, but you got to do some explaining here.
Yes, no, you're playing Mark Andrews, right? You have been, you will continue to play him and all this stuff. I think we can all agree that Mark Andrews has been kind of disappointing lately. He has not finished top 5 since week 6. And that, I mean, his past 3 weeks, he's been tight end 7, tight end 10, tight end 12, I believe. But that's not what you expect from Mark Andrews necessarily. I'm here to tell you that you should have full confidence, or you should bring whatever confidence that you had for Mark Andrews at the beginning of the season back. Because Mark Andrews is arguably the better fantasy player with Tyler Huntley over Lamar Jackson. Last season, when Huntley took over for Lamar, Andrews' target share went from 19% to 28%. That's almost 10% increase in target share. He averaged 92 yards a game with Tyler Huntley. He averaged 66 without Tyler Huntley. Now he gets Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh's allowing the 3rd most fantasy points per game to tight ends over the last 2 weeks. There is one game that should tell you everything you need to know about Pittsburgh versus tight ends. This was 2 weeks ago. It was on Monday Night Football. A tight end for the Indianapolis Colts by the name of Jelani Woods.
Mo Alley Cox. Dang.
Sorry. The other one.
Shoot.
Jelani Woods played a season high 64% of snaps. And he finishes a tight end 2 in the week. You know what his highest snap percentage was before this game?
Not 64%.
38%.
Oh, that was my 7th guess.
We were going to get there eventually. Teams scheme up tight ends against this Pittsburgh defense. If Jelani Woods can go for, what was it? 8 catches, 89 yards, I think. It was 8 for 9. That's all I know.
Wow.
If Jelani Woods can finish as a tight end 2 against his defense because the team schemed him up, just imagine Mark Andrews, who is already the number 1 option, who is getting the arguably the better quarterback for his sake. Again, you're playing Mark Andrews, but I'm here to tell you that there's a heater inbound, and it should not be a surprise if we see Mark Andrews finish top 5 again this week.
I was on the Fantasy Doctors show earlier this week, and the stat brought up was Tyler Huntley last year targeted Mark Andrews on 40% of his dropbacks last year.
Wow.
That should be all you need to know right there. Cameron, your tight end start of the week. I love that you still have faith in him, because I have lost faith in him.
So he had a good week last week. I think he had 14 fantasy points, and he plays significantly better when one or both of Mike Will and Keenan Allen are playing. He played really well at the beginning of the season. The second they go out, teams are like, "Oh, we actually have to cover Gerald Everett." And once they start covering him, he doesn't play quite as well. And Miami's also allowing the third most points to tight ends. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. These two quarterbacks have been in the news a ton lately. Obviously, I don't know how much that actually affects the game plan, but you got to think they're both going to try a little bit extra to show out, to be like, no, I am the better quarterback. Here is why. And so I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. And I think Gerald Everett could find the end zone in this one. So that is why he's my start of the week. But like we've said before, if it's not Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, and like Tyler saying, even Mark Andrews this week, it's pretty much just a shot in the dark. And so I'm just going to take the guy who I think's in a good position to put up fantasy points.
Can we do a quick poll around the podcast here?
Mm-hmm.
Is Justin Herbert a very talented, high-quality starter in the NFL? It is a yes from me.
Barely top 30. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, it's a yes for me too.
I can tell you for sure he's a top 32 quarterback. Yes, he is.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure the public knows, because it seems like that's the hot topic recently of you need to have a stance on Justin Herbert, and some people are goofy and decide to throw things out there like he's not a good NFL quarterback. I'll refrain from naming names, but yeah, Twitterverse is like Justin Herbert's home right now.
Yeah.
He's a good NFL quarterback. We don't need to have this debate. My start of the week has nothing to do with Justin Herbert, but he was on the same team as Justin Herbert formerly, Hunter Henry. So I guess he does have something to do with Justin Herbert. Hunter Henry is my tight end start of the week. Yeah, very loosely. Look, this has nothing to do with Hunter Henry and his talent. It has everything to do with the matchup against Arizona, because they've allowed the most fantasy points to tight ends this year, and they've allowed 7 touchdowns to the position over the past 4 weeks. That's nearly 2 a week. So with how putrid tight ends are, I either want to play a guy, if I don't have a Kelce and Andrews, even like a Hawk or a Dalton Schultz, which are like really the only 4 tight ends I'm willing to start over pretty much anybody. I'll take my chances on a guy who falls into the end zone or sees a ton of volume. I'll play the matchup with Hunter Henry. I feel like saying top 10 upside means nothing at the tight end position, but I think Hunter Henry finishes finishes at the top 10 tight end this week.
Yep. I agree.
Those were our starts of the week. We'll run through them again quick. Tom Brady, Geno Smith, Jared Goff at quarterback, Deonta Foreman, DeAndre Swift, Ezekiel Elliott at running back, Garrett Wilson, Christian Kirk and Tyler Lockett at wide receiver, Mark Andrews, Gerald Everett, Hunter Henry at tight end. Let's wrap out this episode the only way we know how to, by flying through some player props, brought to you by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. If you want an instant match on your first deposit up to $100, you can use the promo code FELLAS or the link down in the description of the audio podcast or YouTube video you are listening to. Tyler, you got a great docket of props here. And now that there's 3 of us, goodness, you got a lot of props here. Let's keep this short and sweet. You can run the show. It'll be a yes or no from Cameron and I. We'll fly on to the next one. Let's do it.
Deal.
Let's do this thing. All right. So the first player I want to talk about, and there's really no line that we're going to give that I'll ask you guys about, but I just want to point this out. Jared Goff.
Over.
His passing yard line is at 274.5. When his line was first released, it was at 251.5.
Do you know how much money they're going to lose on that, though? Because people jumped on that.
Ton.
People jumped on that right away. That's how you know Underdog originally made a mistake there. And again, this isn't a bash Underdog. Love our friends at Underdog, but like that's how you know. That line came out. Everyone saw 251.5, and they said, "Are you kidding?"
Yeah,
After all the stats that I just gave everybody, yeah, over. And I would still take the over at 274.5.
Yeah, I'd be considering taking Amon-Ra over 274 receiving yards this game. So that should tell you where I'm at.
Well, speaking of Amon-Ra St. Brown, we are going to discuss his line at 88.5 receiving yards against the Vikings.
Ooh.
Over, under. What say you, gentlemen?
I'm gonna take the over on that one.
This is one I would push because 88.5 is high.
It is.
But if I had to choose, I would go over. This isn't what I'm going to include in a ton of plays because I have far more confidence in a lot of other plays this weekend. But
Yep.
88.5, if I had to choose, I mean, this Minnesota secondary is just atrocious. So I would take the over.
Yep.
We're gonna stay with the Lions here and discuss one more player, the return of DeAndre Swift. Now there's 3 different lines that I want, you guys can choose from. I'll share them with you. 24.5 receiving yards.
Over. Why is this line still so low?
That's ridiculous.
He tops it with 2 receptions every week, yet we keep it at 24.5. I saw the line last week. I'm like, I think DeAndre Swift has a massive game last week. I called that. And I still hesitated on taking the receiving yards. 24.5 is too low for DeAndre Swift at all times. So over. Easy. Don't ask me again.
He's got 35.5 rushing yards.
I would lean the over. I don't want to bet on DeAndre Swift rushing yards because it's Jamal Williams territory. I would much rather bet on his receiving yards than his rushing yards.
63.5 combined yards after getting the bulk of snaps and carries. Yeah. I shouldn't say and carries, snaps last week with his receiving work.
Yeah, he had 62 rushing yards last week.
Yeah, I'd be willing to go over on combined. The rushing one is just I don't want to touch the rushing one. That one just it would make me miserable. If he doesn't hit that, I would much rather go receiving.
Yeah, I agree.
But I'll take the over on combined.
So we like the over on pretty much all Detroit players. The 3 main ones. Let's move on. Let's move to the Sunday night game because that is the other kind of. That's probably the biggest
high scoring affair. Yeah.
Yes. Tyreek Hill at 97.5 receiving yards. He either goes for 140 plus, which he's done 3 of his last 5 weeks, or he goes less than 90. What say you guys?
I don't like this line, to be honest. Because I feel like if you're going to beat the Chargers, you run on them. But at the same time, I'm never going to ever in my entire life bet the under on Tyreek Hill receiving yards. Never. So I would probably push this one, but if someone's gun to my head, I'd bet the over. Ditto.
And the Chargers, they're not this leaky secondary that they were last year. 19th in total receiving yards allowed this year. I think I know who we're going to talk about next. I would much rather take this next put money down on this next player's prop than I would on Tyreek Hill.
They don't learn.
I was going to say nobody's learning on this next line. And he's my ace in the hole for almost every week this year. He didn't. Last week I was disappointed, but I mean, still on almost. Go ahead, Ty. Name the next prop. I'm with Cameron though. I echo everything he said.
So the player that Lucas is talking about is Jalen Waddle, and his line is at 64.5, Mr. Over himself.
What are we going to learn? Any prop below 70 receiving yards, I'm going to take the over on Jalen Waddle almost every week because it doesn't matter. The matchup does not matter with Jalen Waddle. I know you can say that about Tyreek Hill, but with Jalen Waddle specifically, like why are his lines always 30 yards lower than Tyreek Hill's? 25 to 30 yards lower. Why is that? When he's I get he's still going 20, 30, 40 less yards per game. That's because, like you said, Tyreek Hill's going for 140 most weeks, while Jalen Waddle's going for what? 90?
Yeah.
And yet we're setting his line 22 yards below that. Over. Nobody's going to learn on Jalen Waddle. He's my ace in the hole this year. He's been phenomenal. He has rewarded me handsomely. Excuse me.
He's gone over 9 of the 12 games so far this season. So I take the over in a game where they're gonna throw.
Yep. He's gone over this line in his last 6 games, and I'm not including this last week against the Niners because he got hurt. He got hurt. So that's an over on Waddle. So to summarize, if you're going to take a Dolphin player or a Dolphin receiver, Waddle over Hill, because Waddle is just Mr. Over. So next, let's see here. Which one do I want to talk about? Actually, let's go back to this Minnesota-Detroit game, because we're going to talk about the one player that we probably should be talking. I shouldn't say should be talking about. Justin Jefferson, okay? First game against Detroit. Oof. His line started at 101.5. It's dropped to 94.5 now. This really comes down to, do we think Detroit does the same thing that they did when they first played earlier this year, where they either had a double team, they had a bracket, or a safety over the top?
I don't think that's what it comes down to. I think it comes down to, does Kevin O'Connell prepare for that? Because that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is how it worked last game. And there was no reason for Justin Jefferson to not torch Jeff Okudah, because Okudah was Okudah's good. Like, we needed to start having the conversation of, like, Jeff Okudah, he's not this, bust at the 3rd overall pick in the draft. But come on, you really think Kevin O'Connell is going to let this team bully Justin Jefferson like they did earlier this year? I don't buy that one bit. I think this is a snapback game for Justin Jefferson. I would take the over at 94.5. A line I'd be more willing to push than insert into my plays. Again, just so many other plays I like better than. I don't like betting these like, we're starting to hit the potential ceiling of this player, and if he goes over, it'll be by 6 yards. Versus some other guys, I think they could blow past their props by 20 plus yards.
Yeah.
I would take the over on Justin. I don't see how Kevin O'Connell allows Justin Jefferson to get bullied again by the Detroit Lions of all teams, especially when they've been a lot better against the run now too. I don't think Dalvin Cook's going to have a big day. That isn't to say Dalvin Cook won't be fine in your lineups, but
yeah,
I don't think O'Connell allows Justin Jefferson to be bullied 2 games against Detroit this year.
I really hope not.
Well, I'm preparing myself to be disappointed though. Yeah.
So, and I know we've said this on previous episodes, but the reason why we talk about these push lines is because we want to help you recognize what is a push line and what is an over, what is an underline, right? Like,
this is educational.
This is educational. Thank you. Right. When you see Justin Jefferson, you see 94.5 receiving yards against Detroit, your mind might instantly go, oh, over. There's more to it than that, right? Yep. That's why we're here. That's why we talk about it. Next line's up.
I see too many people who also are just like, look at this recent trend. Are you kidding me? This is going to be this is an incredible matchup. Go the over. I'm like, but you have to dig deeper. You have to dig deeper than just seeing a stud in a favorable matchup and just assuming that they're going to pop off for the 10th straight game, whatever. Like, nothing is guaranteed in the NFL. So you do have to do a little bit more digging. You can't like overanalyze it to the point where like you do like 15 hours of research on one player to figure, like, you know what I mean? Like, you can't overanalyze it, but you have to do your due diligence on it. You can't just see the matchup, see the player, and just say, well, it's guaranteed, because that's not how it works. Just to get a final word in there. I've just seen that too much within the creator realm recently. So just wanted to get that out there.
Absolutely. Sure. Let's move on to Christian Kirk. His line is at 69.5 receiving yards, if I'm not mistaken. I'm double checking that as we speak, and it is still 69.5 receiving yards. He's
Nice.
gone over in 4 of his last 6 games. He gets Tennessee this week. I think I know what you guys are going to say, but I want to hear your thoughts.
Over. That's my thoughts.
Over for sure. Yeah. Tennessee's terrible. I just have a stat just because I saw it. Christian Kirk's been playing amazing. We love Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk just passed Cooper Kupp in yards. Cooper Kupp's been out for 4 weeks. I know that has nothing to do with it.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
Cooper Kupp is still like top 12 in yards on the season. I know that has nothing to do with it, but I just saw that and was just blown away. But yeah, I'm still taking Christian Kirk over on this one.
I don't want to bring in another, platform, but if Prize Picks is at 63.5 and you feel very confident on the over at 63, take the over at 69 on Underdog.
Free money.
Free money. Promo code fellas. Next line we'll go over Deshaun Watson at 222.5 passing yards. I know personally I am smashing the under on this one. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I'm going to take the under. You have it in the notes. Cincinnati is red hot right now. They're playing at home. Amari Cooper, even if he does play, isn't going to be 100%. I just don't see how Deshaun Watson gets above this line with, especially the way he played. I just don't see a complete turnaround from one game to the next because he didn't look good in the preseason either. So, yeah, I'm going to take the under.
I'm going to push this line. I don't want to touch it. Because here's the thing. This is one of those times now where everybody's just ganging up on Deshaun Watson. And at some point, he's going to come back. And it's like, oh, improbable against Cincinnati. Like, if Deshaun Watson goes for 230 in this game, I'm not going to be surprised. Like, this Browns defense isn't good. Like, if Cincinnati gets up, the Browns are going to have to do something. They didn't have to against Houston. They didn't have to. And I know Watson looked bad against a bad Houston defense. I'm pushing it because I refuse this. I've been burned by the Cleveland Browns too much this year on Nicholas Chubb, on Amari Cooper. So the Browns are untouchable for me. This is like a 100% push. I'm not touching this line.
Yeah. Cincinnati's giving up 215 yards per game to quarterbacks too. So that helps ease any decisions.
I'm still pushing it. Like I refuse to touch the Browns.
Yep. I don't blame you.
There's nothing wrong with pushing this line, but if you are going to play this line, lean the under. Do yourself that favor. Lean the under. We get 2 more lines here. One of these being, excuse me, Garrett Wilson, 62.5 receiving yards. Lucas, I believe you brought this up on the Fantasy Doctors show.
And I brought this line at 63.5, and I was willing to smash the over.
So if you smash the over and then the line drops, smash the over still.
I'll smash the over. 90 plus receiving yards in 4 of his past 5 games.
Yeah.
This is easy. And you brought up all the stats earlier, Ty. Yeah, this is an easy over for me. I know it's in Buffalo, a little bit cold, not as fun to throw the football. I kind of don't care. Like, it's Garrett Wilson.
And Mike White.
Yeah, Mike White, who's been on fire. Granted, he's has that backup quarterback magic. That pixie dust will probably wear off eventually. But sorry, I'm riding the hot hand as of right now. I'm willing to die with Garrett Wilson, man. He's too good. He's too good.
Over on Garrett Wilson here at 62. Cam, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. Like, he's one, if I put in a parlay and I lost because of it, I wouldn't be upset about it. Like, if I put in Deshaun Watson on under and a parlay that I was super confident in, I'd be upset with myself that I went that one, because that one feels like, I'm just adding an extra one. Garrett Wilson feels like one you're going to build around, if you're talking player props.
Bingo. Last line we're going to discuss here, Chris Godwin, 58.5 receiving yards. He also has a line for 6 receptions. I'm just going to start with the stats, then I will let you guys answer. He's gone over this line in 4 of his last 5 games. Here are his target numbers since week 5. 12, 13, 11, 10, 8, bye week, 13, 13. His reception numbers since week 5: 6, 7, 6, 7, 6, by 12, 8. Again, San Francisco is a very good defense, but their weakness is their secondary. Tyreek went for 146. That was last week. Greg Dortch went for 103.
The Dortch.
DeAndre Carter went for 64. Chris Olave went for 62. Cooper Kupp, when he was healthy, he went for 79. He went over for 100 in their earlier matchup. Juju went for 124. They've only held one team's leading receiver to less than 58 yards in a game, and that was in week 6 versus the Falcons.
Impressive.
Drake London, trash. Worst rookie wide receiver.
Trash. And it wasn't even Drake London. It was Olamide Zaccheaus.
Oh,
okay.
Not my boy.
And here's the funniest thing. Olamide Zaccheaus finished with exactly 58 receiving yards in that game. They've allowed a receiver to go over this line in every single game this year.
Yeah.
So between 58.5 receiving yards and 6 receptions, I think I know which way we're going to lean here, but I want to ask you, Lucas, Cam, how are we feeling about Chris Godwin?
I'm going the over pretty easily. I just think
on which ones? Are you going over on both?
On both. I'd go on both because it's just so obvious to me that Chris Godwin is the number one in this offense right now over Mike Evans, and Brady just trusts him so much more. And these lines feel low. So yeah, I'm going to take the over on Chris Godwin. I'd go receiving yards before receptions, I think, because I think receptions could definitely be a push.
Yeah, I'm pushing receptions. I hear he meets that line in 3 of his past, 3 of those 7 games. That's just not quite the line I want. I would much rather take the receiving yards because over the past month, the 49ers have allowed the 4th most receiving yards. And so you tell me 58.5 for the number 1 wide receiver in Tampa. Could Godwin smash receptions? Absolutely. I think he's far more likely to smash receiving yards though. I will gladly take the over on Chris Godwin 58.5. That one feels a little too generous.
Yeah. And I'll give you one last one for free here. Christian McCaffrey receiving yards at 38.5 with Brock Purdy, who is just Mr. Dump Off. He's not Mr. Extend the Play. He will dump it off because Christian McCaffrey went for literally 8 receptions and 80 yards last week. So if you're looking for another little bonus play, I highly recommend McCaffrey on the receiving yards. That's a relatively solid play. So in recap of all the lines that we just discussed, DeAndre Swift, give us the over on the receiving yards. 24.5, give us the over. Tyreek Hill, we'll push, but if we have to choose, we'll take the over at 97.5. Jalen Waddle, though, at 64.5 is an easy over because he is Mr. Over. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 88.5. Majority of us say over. There's a little bit of a push factor in there, but majority of us say over. Justin Jefferson, I would say a majority of us say push, but if we have to choose, we say over. Christian Kirk at 69.5, easy over for us. Deshaun Watson, lean under. This could also be a push. Garrett Wilson, 62.5 receiving yards is an over. Chris Godwin at 58.5 receiving yards, over. Christian McCaffrey, 38.5 receiving yards, over. And as always, these lines are provided by our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. You can use the code FELLAS. You get a 100% deposit match on your first deposit up to $100 with the code FELLAS over on Underdog Fantasy. Lucas, I turn this back over to you.
I was just looking at Derrick Henry's lines. He's at 91.5 rushing yards. I like that number. I was just doing some comparison. I've seen his line as low as 82.5 rushing yards.
If it's under 100 right now, it doesn't make sense.
No, it's insanity against Jacksonville. Sorry, I was just curious as I'm comparing lines now. Yes, promo code FELLAS over on Underdog Fantasy. Get an instant match on your first deposit up to $100. As we're coming up on an hour here, fellas, anything that you all want to add as we wrap out the episode?
J.K. Dobbins is officially activated. So that's just one last note to have. That was a sleeper update. So he is officially healthy. I would assume that means he is playing this week, but I have not heard for sure on that, but he is active.
My last little note is that go Morocco. They just knocked out Portugal from the World Cup.
All right. No way. This
Yeah.
World Cup has been crazy.
Yep.
Crazy.
I'd like to
France all the way, though.
apologize.
France is going to win the whole thing.
I'd like to apologize to our friend Kevin. He has 2 teams in this World Cup and both got knocked out yesterday on penalty kicks. And I know he listens to all these episodes, so he'll hear this. But go Croatia.
Oh, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Fantasy Football Fellas podcast. I'm at Lucas Wenzel, Tyler_Plath, Camlaw317 on Twitter, FF Fellas for the main account, the FF Fellas on Instagram, Fantasy Football Fellas on TikTok and YouTube, where you should be subbed. Have those notifications turned on so you know when new videos are out. Same with the podcast, so you know when new episodes are out. And if you want to join the community full of league winners, down in the Chalkboard, unsolicited fantasy football advice. We are 1,600 strong. You can join you can join our Chalkboard for, as I said, unsolicited fantasy advice, waiver wire, trades, player props. We drop player props over there. Literally anything and everything fantasy football is over there. You can join the community. Three Stooges being dudes, and I can say that and mean it, and not say, well, there's only 2 of us. Three Stooges being dudes, the Fantasy Football Fellas. It's been great to have all 3 of us back on one screen together, discussing some starts of the week, some player props, some news, recapping Thursday Night Football. We need to do this more often.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we do.
If only our schedules would allow.
Three
Stooges being dudes, the Fantasy Football Fellas. We will see you all on Monday to recap Week 14. Deuces.
Deuces.
Deuces.